We spent all the time up in the mountains. We were like at coffee fincas and it's beautiful there, but it never crossed my mind that this is a place that I might consider relocating to. Not one time.
Yeah, I have some friends that really enjoy living there, but it is very much in the mountains, and you're kind of restricted to that mountain climate.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you just go back to Oregon then if you just want to stay in the mountains, you know?
For sure.
Hey, welcome to Expat Diaries podcast, where we are talking all things relocating to Costa Rica. If you've ever had the dream or the vision of leaving the country that you're from and deciding to become part of a different community, we get to talk to people who've already done that. We get to walk through their experiences, good, bad, and different, and learn from either mistakes that they've made or experiences that they learned ahead of time that we get to not have to worry about going through those again. And today we get to talk to Forrest. And I'm super excited. Forrest and I spoke the other day on the phone, and now we're just going to kind of chit chat. And like, he's going to walk us through his experience of leaving the U.S. and coming to Costa Rica. So Forrest, I just want to jump right off the bat and go, like, the first time you came, what was that about? And like, why Costa Rica?
Sure. The first time I came here was about 10 years ago. My father had traveled quite a bit, and he always had very nice things to say about Costa Rica. It was one of his absolute favorite locations. So I met a woman, we started dating, and she invited me to Nicaragua. She was a volunteer with the Catholic Charities, so she knew Spanish and she knew her way around the country very well. So I got some confidence built up from that for traveling alone. And shortly thereafter, I went to Costa Rica for the first time after I took a few Spanish lessons.
So had you never come with your dad? He had just come and he had told you how wonderful it was, and you'd never got to make a trip with him?
Correct.
Awesome. And is he still with us?
He's not.
Okay. I started to say, like, has he come to visit you? And I thought, I don't even know if he's, if he's still hanging around with all of us in this level of Earth. Okay. So then when you first came to Costa Rica, like, I would assume, and I could be wrong, but I would assume, like most people like are coming from Nicaragua and they're coming down. Like, did you come over into Guanacaste, or did you find another area to hang out in first?
Well, my first trip here, I learned about the Corcovado National Forest, the national park there, and I heard the statistics and the demographics calling it the most biodiverse place on the planet, comparable only to the Amazon. And again, my father was a big fan of Edward O. Wilson and taught me the importance of biodiversity as well as diversity in life. That having a wide variety of different strengths and weaknesses makes an ecosystem more resistant to change or threat. So I thought to myself, that just sounds like an experience I want to have. So I started on the north side. I spent a little time in Tamarindo and stopped at all the major locations in between, and finally had my grand adventure in Corcovado.
Nice. And tell me about that. Tell me about that grand adventure in Corcovado.
Sure. Well, I only knew that I wanted to go to Corcovado. I didn't have any other information than that. So I just kept telling people on my way that that's where I wanted to go. And I had only 3 recommendations where to go. And all 3 recommendations told me to go to Bolita Rainforest Hostel. And after a few years of kind of reviewing Osa Peninsula, that was definitely the right call. They've got 70 hectares of private secondary jungle that borders the Corcovado National Park.
Right.
And they rent out hostel beds for the normal $12 to $15. So you can get most of the Corcovado experience without having to pay a guide on a daily basis.
Nice.
Which
and
is
how, what year was that? What year was that when you went down there?
Well, that would have been about 2017.
Okay. Okay. It's like, it just helps, like, because the world changes so much in such a short amount of time. So it's like, it's good to have that timeline there. And how long did you stay?
I stayed about 2 weeks my first time. I went back and visited a second time where I got to stay in the owner's home down in the city we didn't use. So I was there for 2 months in Corcovado.
That's
And
awesome.
then just recently I went down again for a third time and stayed for a week.
I love it. I love it. And so that's not where you have ended up, like in your current permanent situation. Were there any other places that you landed, that like you're like, and I know that those were visits, but like, so tell me about whenever you came down permanently, as permanent as you are right now, where did you decide and why did you decide where you were going to land? I mean, there's so many different climates and experiences in Costa Rica. I mean, I always liken it back to like the United States. Like, you just go, I'm going to move to America. Okay, great. Are you going to move to Colorado? Are you going to move to Arizona? Maybe Rhode Island? Like, those are all different experiences, right? Every one of those is so different. And so how did you decide where you wanted to be?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning process and an evolution. When I first arrived in Osa, my first thought is that's where I would settle because it had some of the most isolated and protected wilderness. Pretty quickly realized that it didn't have the community aspect I was looking for. And just it's a bit economically depressed because it's so far away and I just wanted to be in a place with uh, more activity and more communities and more people in general. So I pretty quickly realized that Osa was not ideal for them. It's more of a great to visit, difficult to stay kind of place. So I didn't move my target very far from that. I heard about the legendary Manuel Antonio being one of the really peak locations to visit and a couple months there ultimately because I visited like I said uh, Guanacaste, Monteverde, visited La Fortuna, never made it to the Caribbean. I've heard it's extremely humid, uh, and I fell in love with the South Pacific side pretty quickly. Everything about it just felt right. The temperature felt right. I do well in high humidity as long as it's not close to 100% all the time.
Overbearing heaviness.
Yeah, and actually, I really enjoy the level of humidity that I get here on the South Pacific side. My lungs enjoy it. I don't have any problems at night. I don't have any coughing or any respiratory issues at all. It's very comfortable. My skin enjoys it. It's a really pleasant feeling. So I kind of went from one to the other. I wanted to live where the wilderness was totally isolated and nobody went. And then I moved to the tourist capital,
Yeah.
country, where you constantly have thousands of people coming and going every weekend. Yeah,
it's very transient.
Very transient. So it was very nice for a couple months because it was very easy to go to the beach and talk to tourists that were coming through, talking about the lovely experiences they've had, sharing the experience that I have. And that was really nice, but it's very short-term, superficial connections. And again, just didn't have the community that I was looking for. It's much more short-term tourism. I was looking for more long-term tourism experiences.
And so I know you just touched on that, but one of the things that you love doing is really kind of interviewing people face to face about their travels, right?
So what do I just enjoy doing in general?
Yeah.
With nature, yeah. Uh, well, it's mountains over beach for me. I'm not a big fan of lounging on the beach, and I like rugged, hilly terrain, and the beach, by definition, is pretty flat. So Manuel Antonio actually had a bit of that. It has that small mountain right in front of it,
Right.
and I like to find local hikes that are not operated, basically that don't have a fee, so that it's easy for me to go 2 or 3 times a week. And I found a couple opportunities like that in the Manuel Antonio area. One of them was just a river that had a footpath, and then I enjoy using the rivers as a trail essentially, and doing that. That would probably be my absolute favorite activity.
I love that. Hiking is probably my number one. And it's funny because like every time I'm down, like I feel like I spend more time hiking than I spend at the beach, no matter where I'm staying. Like I feel like I spend more in the mountains than I do in the water, but I love to be able to just turn around and see it. Like, especially like from, if you're on the mountain ranges, like, especially like over in Manuel Antonio, like, and when you're up there hiking, there's points when you can just turn around and then you can see this big expanse of ocean opening up, you know, and I love to see it. I don't necessarily love to be in it every day.
Down on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that between the lack of community, we're living directly on the beach gets very hot and extra humid. So I continued refining my goal, and I realized I wanted something kind of in between. And what would be really ideal is if I could find something about half an hour to an hour from the beach that's up in the mountains a bit, so I can just cut that temperature a little bit, and then whenever I'm looking for that fun hot beach environment, it's really easy for me to go, and it doesn't feel like I have to stay the whole weekend or a really big investment to get down there.
Right. Well, and the cool thing about that too is that like there's very few places in the world that are like that. And because the way the mountainous terrain of Costa Rica, literally so the mountains and the jungle come right up to the beach. So it's not like, you know, you're in a, and even in the resort towns, there's very little that's built right on the water. There's a lot that's built so that you can see the water, but there's very little. They've done very well to protect the coastline from tourism, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, the features of the mountain close to the coastline, like you say, is very unique. As far as Central America, it's the only country that I'd visited. I had a trip as a child to Brazil. So definitely in Latin America, my experiences were very limited. I decided pretty quickly that this is where I wanted to be. And I've come across people that were critical of that decision before visiting other areas. And in particularly, they said Colombia would have been a really good place for me to look. It has a lot of the similar nature and wildlife, you know, progressive government as far as, you know, drug laws. I enjoy psychedelics and marijuana. But when I look at it on a map, it's really spread out. Colombia is a massive country, and there's very little beach options on the what would be the Atlantic coast. It's mostly inaccessible, so that only leaves the Caribbean coast. And the Caribbean coast, if you go to the nearest city, which might even be like Medellin, from the major metropolitan area to the coast, it's a 12-hour drive. And if I want to get from Manuel Antonio or Capos and I want to go to the capital, that's less than a 4-hour drive.
Right.
So the fact that Costa Rica is so compact as a country was really appealing. And I'd say that was one of the biggest things. Oh, and then the coastline. If you look at the Caribbean coastline of Colombia, they don't have any mountains. You know, you'd have to spend hours and hours and hours just to get to the nearest mountain. Me, you know, I drive 5 minutes and the incline is steep. I start going up.
For sure. And that's funny because I've been to Colombia and, but we never went over to the coast. We spent all the time up in the mountains. We were like at coffee fincas and it's beautiful there, but it never crossed my mind that this is a place that I might consider relocating to. Not one time.
Yeah, I have some friends that really enjoy living there, but it is very much in the mountains, and you're kind of restricted to that mountain climate.
Well, if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you just go back to Oregon then if you just want to stay in the mountains, you know?
For sure.
Well, I love it. I love it that like, and I'll tell you, I feel the same ways, but I did travel to other countries before we decided on Costa Rica. Um, and I've traveled to others even since we've decided, and it just reinforces, what I think and what I feel about it. One of the countries that I had investigated, because I thought, I mean, if you were looking at it logically, it made sense, was Belize. I mean, it's an English speaking country. They speak Spanish as well, but mostly because it used to be British Honduras before they got their independence. So English is spoken there. So that would have been simple. Their currency is 2-to-1. The exchange rate is super simple. And then when we made a trip down there, and we went there before in my mind, I knew that was the place. I had done all the research, and on paper, it looked like the place. And then when I went there, it wasn't the place. Like, it didn't feel like home. There was some things environmentally that they did that I didn't agree with. Like, they would just gather up all of the trash in Belize, and then it went to this town called Dangriga. And then every night you could see this big orange plume of smoke as they were burning all of the trash from the entire country in Dangriga. And at that time, now they've solved this problem since then, but at that time they didn't have their own electricity source. So they were buying electricity from Mexico, and it was super expensive. And it really was a solid tunnel for child trafficking. It was like everywhere you went was, and this was probably in 2011 or 12, but there was solid, signage everywhere about child trafficking and to beware of that. And so you already felt that immediately. And there really wasn't, like, you come up to a 4-way stop and there was some dude in military equipment with an AK-47, and he was like the crossing guard, I guess. And so it just really was like, there was a whole lot about it that just didn't sit right with me. The sand fleas were horrible. And I was just like, crap. And I was so disappointed. Like, I left there literally crestfallen, because I was just like, I knew this was the place. And then when it wasn't, I was just like, okay, erase everything, start from scratch. And so it was so nice when we discovered Costa Rica. And then, like, it almost felt like the minute you landed, it just felt like home. It felt like you could take a deep breath, and you're like, I don't know why it felt like that, but it does. And it's felt like that ever since then for me. Did you experience some of the same?
Sorry, in what regard?
Like, did you experience that same feeling whenever you got to Costa Rica, that this feels right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I did a lot of my research as well on paper, seeing the high amount of biodiversity, the lack of military, and how that reflects in the values of the people.
Mm-hmm.
That's really nice. As well as the degree to which they're economically developed.
Mm-hmm.
Very well. So
yeah,
on paper, it looked really good.
They've come a long way too. So the roads are a lot better than they used to be. Probably not out in Nisara still, but in the southern zone for sure. So so you're originally from Oregon, right?
Yep.
And do you miss it?
I don't.
I understand.
Experiences can be summarized of being cold and living in the city. It's remarkably isolated. You're surrounded with people that you don't know all the time. And here, where I am now, it's a very small town, and every person that I see on the street, I know their face, and we're friendly, and we say hello.
So I am going to be there in like 2 weeks in Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to visit my 2 sons and their families, and we're going to stay for over Labor Day weekend. It'll be a nice respite, but like I don't want to live there, but they love it there.
Yeah, as far as the states go, it's probably the number one state I would want to live in. But it's still kind of got that, however you want to define it, American, United States.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Kind of homogenized across the nation.
For sure. For sure. Okay. So now we've determined why you have landed where you are. So where are you at right now? Where is your community and your home right now?
Tinamaste, which is between Dominical and San Isidro.
Mm-hmm. And it's a really small community. So tell me what attracted you to that, because it is like a curve in the road.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, it was on paper. I could look at the satellite map, and before I had even visited, I thought to myself, "Well, Tinamaste looks really great," because I started developing this vision in my head of something that's 30 minutes from the beach, uh, high up with some altitude, so you can get a break from the heat, easily accessible to the coast, and it would be nice if there was a medium large city, also not too far away. So as far as the South Pacific zone goes, there's really only one place that fits it, and there's one major road from the South Pacific side that goes over the mountains, and it's going out of Dominical. If you look out of Quebos, if you look out of Uvita, there's nothing that takes that route aside from very rugged roads. Technically, you can't find something, but they're not going to be paved.
Right. And from both of those cities, you would have to have come down and take that road in anyways. You would have to come down to Dominical and head up anyways. It's like the most logical place.
Yeah, it was definitely the most logical place. The only main road other than, Jaco going around to San Jose. And even then, I considered something like Athena, Athens. But it's further away from Jaco. And then the beach that you get access to is the Jaco beach.
Mm-hmm.
And none of that had the culture I was looking for. So there's nothing near Quebos, there's nothing near Uvita. Dominical has this beautiful road that goes directly to San Isidro, which is that major city. So if I
now, wait a
need
minute. To people who haven't driven it, let me explain to you what directly looks like. It looks like this. All the way up the mountain. It is a ton of switchback, and it's a beautiful drive. But like the mileage from here to there is only like this, but that's a slow and careful drive up and down.
Yeah, it takes about an hour to get from Dominical to San Isidro.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what the mileage or the kilometers are actually for that?
I don't
either. I'll have to look that up, because that's what's interesting. I remember the first time. So I took that road all the way to Cartago. Like we took that route all the way up, and there's parts of it when you get on the other side of San Isidro that are so gorgeous. I took so many pictures because you're almost up in the cloud forest at one point. You get up high enough for that. And I just kept telling my husband, okay, I'm done taking pictures. I'm not taking, and then he would round another corner and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'd have my phone out again, taking pictures again. It's just so beautiful. And the higher you get, the more gorgeous it gets. I love that road so much. It is probably one of my favorite all time. When I'm down, if I'm not going to San Isidro, I will like make it up to Platanillo or PZ, whatever, just to be able to go up and hang out and have some lunch, because I just love it up there.
Yeah, San Isidro is also very, very close to Chiripo, the tallest mountain in the country. And as you go from San Isidro up to Cartago, it is truly legendary.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. And it shouldn't be missed. Like if you're in that part of the country, like just take the time, don't plan anything that day, and just make that drive up. Stop and eat on the side of the road, stop and shop on the side of the road, and just make that drive up and take your time and just enjoy how beautiful it is.
You bet.
So Tinamaste is your home for right now.
It is, yeah. And there's a lot going on around here.
It's like one of the best ferias around is in Tinamaste.
That was my first experience here in the city, and that really sealed the deal.
Did it?
It did, yeah.
I mean, the access to fresh fruits and vegetables, like at what we would consider in the U.S. a farmer's market. But not only just that, but also like homegrown honeys, cheeses, anything that you could think about, like is just abundant, and it's amazing. And it's like, here, try this, taste this. I even tried some, I think, almond cheese that was made out of almond milk. The
Do you still think so?
yeah, and it's very artisan, right? So it's very like let's see what we can make out of what we have here. So it's really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot more artisanal products that I've found. I've been to several farmers markets across the country, and they tend to focus a lot more on the fresh produce. This place has a lot more artisanal edible goods as well as artistry. One man has imports from Peru, and he
Mm,
brings in indigenous tapestries that are all hand woven.
I bet it's
So
beautiful.
yeah, neat.
But it is. All right. So tell me what your ultimate goal is, because we talked about that. I know that in the Diamante Valley, high concentrations of psychedelic communities, and that's really where your focus is, and what you're interested in is creating communities around that. So let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's a really broad subject. Well, psychedelics have been a part of my life for a really long time, and I had never been to a ceremony before I got here to Costa Rica. And all of my experiences with psychedelics were self-guided or with the help of friends. We never really had any sort of expert or guide. Um, and that was difficult at times, I
I'm
gotta
sure.
say. And prohibition has lightened up over the years, especially in Oregon. But when I was young, 20 years ago, um, it was a big deal, and that added to the stress of the situation. But out here in Tinamaste, and like you say, the Diamante Valley, there are places where you can buy uh, psilocybin from a cafe or from the corner shop. And that was a really unique and unexpected surprise.
I bet. So have you experienced ayahuasca like with a shaman now that you've been in country? Have you like done a guided?
I haven't gotten to ayahuasca yet, but I did find peyote that was administered by indigenous Mexicans.
Nice.
So they have their lineage has thousands of years of experience with that plant. So the ceremony itself was very carefully crafted. It was truly one of the best experiences of my life, and something I've been looking for, specifically peyote. I had not, it was very rare and difficult to find. And the preparation was flawless, the ceremony was flawless, and it was just beautiful.
I love it. And how recent was that?
That was about 6 months ago.
Nice. Nice. And so what is the future look like for you, Forrest, in Costa Rica? Like what I mean, not that everybody has to have a plan for every day of their life, but like some sort of general guideline as to what we think the future is going to reveal for us. What do you think that's going to be?
Yeah, well, one thing I've already gotten used to is that your plans are changing constantly. My primary goal is to learn about myself and to grow. Um, and what that's going to look like exactly is really unclear. So I've just started with carving out space, free time for myself so that I can focus on learning a musical instrument, practicing foreign languages, focusing on physical health and exercise, getting my diet really clean. These are all things that I really struggled with in the United States.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of depression, a lot of that cold, lack of motivation. So when I come here, all of those things dramatically change without any hard effort of my own will. The energy just fills me, and I get this incredible focus and energy to start working on myself and accomplishing the goals that I want within myself.
Mhm.
So, for now, a lot of my goals are internal. First, I want to become the person that I want to be, and then I hope that the long-term opportunities that I'm looking for outside will start to open themselves up.
I love it. So do you have a time frame that you plan on living in Costa Rica, or do you plan on this is the rest of my life is here?
Well, I'm not very confident, but I have the feeling that this will be my new home base. This will be where I spend more than half of my time for the rest of my life. The
Nice.
only thing that would pull me away is a really fantastic career opportunity. If someone
And
asked me to go back to the States or pretty much anywhere else in the world, if it was exactly what I was looking for, of course I would take it.
and what do you think that is? Like what is that big that could tempt you?
Well, building a community that looks like what already exists here in Diamonte Valley. So my first thought is to either join or help develop a new community, helping market the community, operate the ceremonies, and do the basic logistics of managing employees, making sure everything is clean, everyone gets paid, making sure that all the clients are happy, making sure that the buildings are well built and well maintained, and that we're maintaining a responsible ecological footprint. So, a permaculture, learning about the details of farming. So, if the opportunity that community is going to be here, then I'll be here. If it asks me to go abroad, then I go abroad.
I love it. I love it. So tell me your family. So I always am concerned about this and curious about it. So when you leave, you have to leave your family. And how did they feel about you going, okay, I think Costa Rica is going to be where I spend a majority of my time? They were supportive, or they were like, what are you thinking?
Oh well, no, that one's easy. My family could always see that I was struggling in Oregon, and
Mhm.
all they wanted to see is they wanted to see me happy. So, my mom had visited Costa Rica with my dad, and she's also traveled all over the world. So the idea of operating or living in a developing world country is just not even a second thought.
Right.
You know, my entire family has always been very comfortable living in the developing world.
Nice.
My dad actually spent about 7 years of his life living in Nepal.
Wow.
Um, so Costa Rica looks pretty easy by comparison.
I'm sure.
So my mother's been extremely supportive. She can see the transformation that takes place almost overnight, and she's just enormously supportive.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. I know there's times whenever I will interview people and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, my family was like, are you crazy? What are you doing?" And I literally interviewed this one gal, and she had come down for a wedding and then just didn't leave. Like she went back, sold her apartment, and then just came right back. I mean, and she was a school teacher in Washington D.C. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like she's like, well, I knew that this is where I should be. And like my family thought I was crazy. And now like her sister lives down there too. And like they've all eventually gotten on board. But at first you have to deal with that. In some instances, you have to deal with that uh, pushback that, people looking at you like you've lost your mind. So it's awesome that your family was already well versed in what the rest of the world looks like. So many aren't. So that's fantastic. So we've got your family supporting you. You've got some internal work you're going to be doing on you, and then eventually working on the communities around you, which is fantastic. What else do you want people to know about your experience? Like, was there anything that when you came down was super difficult, like that you thought would be easier, and you're like, what the crap? This is convoluted, or even on the opposite side of it, something that you thought would be harder. And then when you got it, you're like, oh, that was super simple.
Um, I don't think I really encountered either of those extremes too much, because the finding the location definitely took time, but it
Mhm.
wasn't extremely difficult. It was just an adventure, and every step was there. It wasn't lit. It wasn't a well lit path, but
Right.
the step that I needed to take was there.
Mhm.
I'd say probably one of the biggest challenges is there's just not a lot of money out here, and all of the businesses, these tourist businesses, these communities, they rely primarily on tourism and income.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people that come here with money and stuff. A lot of people are kind of like me, that are just kind of trying to figure it out one day at a time, and don't really have much of a plan. That really adds to the charm for me, is that people are out here putting their lives or their money where their mouths are. They're not letting anything hold them back from pursuing their dreams.
So then what do you do for money on a daily basis?
Um, I received something from my father's passing, and that is primarily what's getting me through this period. I do some small work. I do some work for my farmer who lives right next door. So I trade my fresh produce with him. Sometimes my landlord has some chores available for me, so I can get a few bucks off of rent. But mostly what I do is I just live extremely frugal. My budget is about $800 a month, and that I own a vehicle, um, so I pay for gasoline and such.
That's a pretty decent budget. And then um I know I just keep pressing this, but it's like I know I'm doing it, and it's like I'm trying to push you into a box that you probably don't want to be in. It's like, how long can you sustain that before you're like, okay, I've got to start figuring out how to generate income?
I've got about a year and a half.
Okay. You got about a year and a half to figure out your health and your mental health, your physical health, all of the things internally, and then determine what the external you will be doing to contribute that will draw an income.
Yeah, exactly. So to go through, really a total transformation, which is my goal. My mental health was weak, my physical health was weak. I always talk about the pillars of physical health, which are sleep, diet, and exercise.
Mhm.
All of those were absolutely terrible, despite all efforts of will, and planning and effort. It never happened in Oregon. So I feel in a lot of ways I'm kind of starting from scratch.
Mhm.
So a year and a half for a total transformation is doable. I feel optimistic about my outlook.
And when you were in Oregon, what did you do for a living there? Is any of that transferable?
A massage therapist, but um, it was a career that I had associated with a lot of stress and struggle. It's an oversaturated market in Oregon. There's a lot of massage therapists, and your options are either to go into private practice, which means you have to market yourself really aggressively, and that gets exhausting. You spend as much time marketing as you do working.
Mhm. For sure.
And if you go to work for a spa or pretty much anyone else, they're going to take the lion's share of the revenue. So I have a lot of negative associations with the career. And if I have to fall back on it, of course I will. But I'm really trying to look for something.
Maybe it would be a different experience there, though, since the environment is different. And I don't know. It's funny that you said that about the marketing, because I have a friend of mine in the States that has a massage business. So she has several masseuses that work for her as well. And I'm so glad you even brought that up, because I totally forgot that she had messaged me last week. So I own a marketing agency, and she was like, look, I need to learn more about the marketing side of this. I know I need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's got to be tough whenever you just want to do the thing that you love to do. But in order to do it, you've got to go over here and do this thing that you don't love to do, the marketing side of it, right? To be able to always have a full table of people to, help their lives be better, help them relieve stress, help them, I personally don't enjoy getting a massage. Like I'm one of the one rare women in the whole wide world that are not like, oh my God, my husband got me a massage for Valentine's Day. I'm like, oh hell crap, don't do that to me. But I go and see Sarah when I have an issue, right? Like I'm like, okay, I've had a headache for like 3 weeks, and between you and my chiropractor, we've got to get something figured out, and that's when I go and see Sarah's when I need help. not just for the relaxation and that this is a splurge for myself. So I'm glad you brought that up because I've got to reach out to her today because I left her message on red and she wanted to have lunch and I forgot. Dang it. So I do get your struggle there because I know that this is something that she battles all the time of how much time do I spend per day doing this thing versus the thing that I love doing. So I get it 1,000,000%.
Yeah, and they're really wildly different experiences. One career is massage therapy, and the other career is sales. And I've actually worked in sales as well. And the idea is that you're really trying to convince someone of something. And
persuasion, 100%.
Yeah, I don't want to be persuading people just to make a buck. I want to, like you said, I just want to do my art.
For sure. Have you considered, because I think that down in Uvita, they've moved where their feria is to where it is now, but where it was at before, across the street, there was a chiropractor that would be there like every weekend too. And like you got an appointment with him, and on Saturdays was the only time that he practiced. He was from the States. He'd moved down, but he was retired, but like on Saturdays, he would do adjustments only while the feria was open. Have you considered like even that micro piece of it?
Well, they have the feria here in Tinamaste, and it reminds me of the atmosphere that I had back in Oregon. It seems pretty oversaturated. So I hadn't really considered it too much. I'm not focusing on an income right now because I do have time. My focus is really my goals are entirely internal. I need to get myself where I need to be. And then once I feel stronger with my mental health, then I'll be able to start marketing myself and putting myself out there and doing some of those social interactions that do take a little more energy out of me.
They do. Well, I'm glad that you're focusing on your health first. It's super important. And I'm sure as a parent, your mom is probably thrilled that you are as well. Like all we want is our kids to be happy and healthy. And doing something that they love on the daily. And that even if that is just solid self-work, I love that you are dedicating that time for that. If anybody wants to know where Tinamaste is, look it up on a map. It's one of the most beautiful areas of Costa Rica as well. And if you ever want to have the world's best farmers market, you want to go to that one for sure. And so, Forrest, I've loved our time together. I'm so appreciative that you carved out some time for me to be able to share with everybody who's considering a move or who has moved and moved back, and maybe they're wanting to come back again, the reasons why they fell in love with Costa Rica. 100%. Like this is what this forum is about, is really just to share the stories and the experiences of the people who've made that decision. And whether you believe it or not, that brave leap to go, okay, let's leave everything I know, even though it's chaos, let me leave everything I know and come to a totally new experience. And it is a brave leap. And I applaud everyone who's made it because I know all of the sacrifice that goes in to make those decisions. And so congratulations to you, Forrest. And I hope to catch up to you whenever I am in country. I'm not there right now, but I hope to catch up to you whenever I'm in town and just say hello.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that you're here.
Absolutely. And everybody that is watching along, remember to follow, subscribe, and like all of the buttons that you need to push, whatever platform that you are watching this on or listening to it on. And we've got just a ton of great guests like Forrest that are lined up ready to share their experiences. And maybe there's something in there that will help you make this transition easier for you. And as we always say when we finish off here, and you have a wonderful day and pura vida.
Pura vida.